The transgender community in the United States is reeling as Republican lawmakers and prominent conservative figures try to curtail their rights.
Arkansas passing a bill blocking gender-affirming care for trans youth.
Last week, Alabama became the third state in the nation to pass a measure restricting gender-affirming care for transgender and non-binary youth.
GOP lawmakers in Kentucky passed legislation to ban gender-affirming care for transgender minors.
Utah now joins 11 other states that have some sort of ban on transgender kids.
This is what they call a culture war. We call it a campaign of persecution.
There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level.
We're actually genuine Americans who believe in the God of the Bible. Do you believe in the God of the Bible?
Trans rights are human rights! Trans rights are human rights! Trans rights are under attack! What do we do?
2023 has seen a wave of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation swept across the United States. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, there have been 467 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in state legislatures this year, a record number that has set the alarm. Most of these bills aim to restrict or criminalize healthcare for trans youth, bar them from participating in school sports, limit their access to public facilities, or allow discrimination based on religious beliefs and sexual identity. Jethro Alonzo, a young trans person, has experienced some of these laws firsthand. He shared with us what he thinks of these legislative efforts.
You're just going to see a lot of kids either having breakdowns a lot later in life when they realize what they were not able to access, or you're going to see kids putting themselves in very high-risk situations, either running away from home, moving with people that they shouldn't necessarily be living with, or just skipping the state completely. It's something I've thought about a lot. Thankfully, I was able to start therapy after I turned 18. But just knowing that, it's like, even if I wanted to, I couldn't, would have been very, very isolating, very heartbreaking. And my heart goes out to everybody that's realizing that that's the situation they're not in, honestly, because I couldn't imagine myself being there.
Amber Manker, a therapist focused on LGBTQ mental health, explained her worries about the current situation.
I think that this population has been chosen, but I think this issue is bigger, right? There's something else, something more insidious, something, right, that pushes this agenda. When you're a certain identity and you don't see yourself in a lot of spaces, you start to think less of yourself and feel less about yourself. But at the same time that's happening, the group that sees themselves everywhere, they're starting to think of themselves as stronger and better, right? And it leads to further division and harm.
Maria Franzblau, an FIU trans student and activist, talked with us about her experience organizing as part of a minority in Florida.
The Republican Party, and to a lesser extent the Democratic, or to a general extent the Democratic Party, aren't able to address many of the biggest problems we face in Florida. Inflation, rising rents, rising prices, lack of any type of affordable housing, low-paying jobs, rising sea levels. They're not able to fix a lot of these things because many of the people that are responsible for those things, the big landlords, the big corporations, the big polluters, are the ones that fund their campaigns. And inherently, there's a contradiction there that is preventing real meaningful action from being taken there. And so instead, if neither side can fix your real problems, what the GOP and what the far right has been able to offer is, this ability to create a scapegoat and kind of offer, a solution to fake problems, basically.
Attorney Scott McCoy, interim deputy legal director of the Southern Poverty Law Center and the first gay senator of Utah, presented his informed perspective of what's happening.
The unifying kind of main culture war front that was a reliable organizer and motivator of voters, conservative voters, was the anti-abortion battle. When they achieved their goal, their main goal of overturning Roe v. Wade, they were left with a little bit of a vacuum and trying to figure out, okay, well, we don't want all of our conservative voters to hang the mission accomplished banner and then go home and not come back. And so in an effort to establish another front in the culture war where they can motivate those same people to stay engaged and stay fearful and stay angry, they have pivoted to attacking transgender people and sadly, specifically transgender youth.
According to the ACLU, in 2021, 98% of trans people who attempted suicide cited denial of gender care. At the same time, a 2018 study from UCLA found that trans people are 4 times more likely to suffer violence than cisgendered people.
All efforts to codify hate in our laws, on our books, and in our policies are both a cause and a stimulus for hate group activity. It has a profound impact on the public discourse and on the narrative, and it emboldens and encourages various hate groups. We've seen hate groups that are focused on racial identity or religious identity in the form of anti-Semitism, right? That haven't traditionally played in these contexts. We've seen them beginning to adopt this rhetoric and this narrative from their conservative religious counterparts. And we've seen that, and that's really, really dangerous because you're seeing this almost uniting of these various different aspects of hate groups and extremists.
So the far right is ultimately the enemy, and they're the main enemy. But at every step of the way down the chain, it is going to be enforced by cowards. The far right is launching this great attack, and so many of the people that are facilitating it, that are at every level supporting it, are people that might consider themselves liberals or progressives, or better yet, apolitical.
Scarlett Friends-Blau is Maria's mom, and while learning that Maria's transgender came as a shock, she supports her daughter wholeheartedly. But she now has to cope with the danger and stress such news represents in Florida.
So this is the thing, right? Maria only came out to us about a month ago. So it's relatively recent. And at that moment, you start trying to re-examine your life, try to re-examine what happened. So it definitely took us by surprise. And, my first thing that I said is of course, I love you. And I love you always and forever, but I'm going to apologize right now for the time that it's going to take me to be able to use the right pronouns. Because I'm it's not that it's going to take me to do it, but I know I'm going to slip up. And I'm I want you to know it's not going to be from anything but just 20 years of using this. And then the next question that my husband had was, what about your name? Your name is pretty gender neutral, so you can keep it. And she said, I don't know about that. And that hit me harder than anything else because, I named her. And I named her after a brother that passed away. So I was like, let's keep it. And she was like, well, that's going to be my decision. And I was like, oh, okay, it's true. It's your decision.
But the moral of the story goes to show that
what my child wants to wear, the name they want to have, it doesn't affect anyone. It doesn't affect how anybody else wants to lead their lives.
We also spoke with the other side of the debate. Dr. Richard H. Sandler is a pediatrics professor and co-chair of the American College of Pediatricians, an organization cataloged by many as a hate group for their opinion on LGBTQ issues.
When teenage girls who weigh 60 pounds think that they're fat, okay, we call this anorexia nervosa, our appropriate response is not to affirm their fatness. Our appropriate response is to have the compassion and to work with them just to get at the underlying issues and help them have full lives. As far as the schools are concerned, this is something to occur, these dialogues should occur with the family, with the family plus the care providers in different ways. And we should be careful about what teachers are doing. The term that occurs to me is behind closed doors, but there's not transparency here of what teachers are doing. And the younger the children, the more inappropriate it is, in my opinion, for teachers to be pursuing the transgender agendas with these children. And that it's perfectly appropriate for the state to say, you know, you shouldn't be doing this. You're largely public education. The public is funding this. You're accountable to the public. This is an issue for the families, not for you to be indoctrinating children who don't have any chance of knowing any better.
Despite the circumstances, the transgender community remains strong amid an uncertain future.
For all of the despair and for all of the issues that I described and all the things that we face in this state, it is through organizing and it is through my belief and my faith in working class people's ability to stand up for themselves. It's why I've stayed here as long as I have. It's why I still had enough faith to come out. And it's ultimately what I think, if anything, will be what defeats the far right and defeats DeSantis.
Is being able to look at myself in the mirror and understanding that regardless of what I decide to change, I continue being myself. You know, I've met the person in the mirror and understood they are expansive, they are overflowing, they don't meet the physical barriers that so many other people have in their brains, and I'm still me regardless.